Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Waste World podcast. I am your host, Gage Edwards, fresh off our trip from the Waste Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. It was a great week to meet up with industry professionals, industry friends, see how everyone's doing after a year away from Waste Expo and a couple of months removed from other waste events. But we're back. We were back. We had a great week, saw a lot of people, saw a lot of great conversations happening. People were having a good time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So today's going to be a little different. I'm not sitting down with a guest today. It's just me kind of recapping some of the stuff we have on waste360.com from Waste Leadership Summit, some of my experiences there, and all the good things in between. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of one of the industry's premier executive events, being Waste Leadership Summit. And it was a week of fun. As I mentioned, I recently returned from the summits. I spent a few days down there in Washington, D.C., speaking with the leaders of the industry. I was in sessions. I moderated a panel myself. Had some interviews covering big topics shaping the future of waste and recycling. That includes artificial intelligence, route optimization, safety culture, PFAS destruction technologies, the growing challenge of lithium-ion battery fires, which is always a hot topic, and I hate that I keep making that pun. So there was no shortage of important conversations happening at the Waste Leadership Summit. And if you missed it, if you weren't there, sorry you missed it. It was a good time had by all. So let's recap some of the biggest takeaways from the event. Hopefully I'll share some of my personal observations in there as well throughout all my conversing here. And I'll highlight some of the interviews that I had, some conversations that stood out to me. So I'd just like to start off the Waste Leadership Summit experience. Before we get anything specific, let's talk the talk here. Talk the event itself. Great hotel, the Washington Hilton down there in Washington, D.C. Driving into Washington, D.C. for me, as you know from listening to this podcast, I'm a local guy to D.C. area. So a quick little drive-in for me. Always construction getting into Washington, D.C. in and out. So I would have rather have flown, but I can't take a small little plane from where I live into Washington, D.C. So I had to make the drive myself, which is fine. It's fine. Something that stood out to me, and this is probably noticeable for everybody there who's been at Waste Expo before, is the Waste Leadership Summit. It's a smaller show. It was a smaller show, and that is a big difference for Waste Expo. So while I wasn't getting 30,000 steps a day, 12,000 still sounds pretty good. Walking and talking, meeting with the people, being at the booths downstairs where they kind of get them all in a little area, so you're not getting too lost, you're not overwhelmed. Good conversations happening throughout, and everything's kind of close. We had the stage there for the EREF auction. Everything is right next to the booth, so if you wanted to get to the EREF auction, you could, and you could pop back over to a booth if someone's still hosting and giving away some swag. There you go. So that it has its perks in that way. Different from a massive show like Waste Expo, of course, because at Waste Expo, a lot of walking and talking, which I do like. I like the massive show. I like the big trucks. I like the big technology put together. So both shows serve a different purpose, but both audiences come away happy. When I talk to people really enjoyed the Waste Leadership Summit. So, it was nice to hear that. Waste Leadership Summits, CEOs, presidents, investors, operators, technology providers, safety leaders, we're all in one place, talking together. I'm not talking like I'm one of these people. I'm none of these people. I'm definitely not a CEO of anything. But it's like those conversations are in much closer corners to each other. So you may not see the executives walking around Waste Expo, but at Waste Leadership Summit, you might run into them accidentally because we're all in a much smaller place. So that is a nice perk there. What struck me this year was how the same themes kept popping up. Technology, AI, safety, PFAS, operational efficiency. Those kind of topics kind of commanded the event. And I think they're going to continue to. And it seemed like these things aren't slowing down for anybody. So no matter which room you walked into, these topics are finding their way into the conversation. Even my session, segue, I hosted the session Smarter Routes, Safer Streets, how AI is changing waste collection. Me moderating it, having questions ready to go, knowing we're talking about smart routes, safer streets, being AI-led, AI was everywhere. We had a great panel of a couple guys who were talking about AI and the innovations that it's making in technology or in the waste industry and why that's a good thing to embrace. It's quickly gone from being a futuristic concept to something that operators are actively deploying today. And during the session, we explored where AI is creating real value and where some of the hype still exists. For me, a few themes stood out. First, route optimization continues to be one of the most practical and impactful applications of AI in waste collection. Second, predictive maintenance is becoming increasingly important. Like that ability to identify issues before a truck breaks down, that reduces downtime, it improves safety, it saves operators significant money. That's important. That's what we need to accomplish there. Third, being AI is helping companies make better use of data they're already collecting. So instead of simply gathering information and kind of reading over these spreadsheets and not really knowing what to do with it, operators are now using that data to make smarter decisions. You got to craft the AI with what you're doing, and the output can be a pretty big deal. One of my biggest takeaways from moderating the session wasn't that AI isn't replacing people. AI is helping people make better decisions. And, that's a theme that carried throughout the event, the entire event. And I think that's important to remember is that when AI is instilled in a place, you may think it's coming for your job, but AI doesn't work without users, right? The AI has to be implemented into your business, your technologies, your operations, and it only gets there because of you. So AI is a tool, not a replacement. Let's hope it stays that way. I'm not interested in a Terminator 2 future. I'm not. Speaking of AI, let's talk about one of my interviews I did from the summit. I met up with Eric Walsh, the new CEO of AMCS, and this was actually his first waste and recycling event after stepping into the role not too long ago, which is nice because I remember my first time at a waste event, which was the Waste Expo 2023 in New Orleans. And that show, again, is massive. So I think Eric here had a nicer introduction to a smaller show to not be immediately overwhelmed. But from our conversation, what stood out to me, his perspective as someone coming from the software world and looking at the waste industry with fresh eyes, he described the industry as operationally complex, asset intensive, and mission driven. He also says he sees enormous opportunity. One thing he kept coming back to was route optimization, which we learned from our AI talk earlier. So his view, route optimization and predictive fleet maintenance represents some of the biggest opportunities for margin improvement in the industry. So let's think about that. So if a company is buying tens of millions of gallons of diesel each year, even small improvements can efficiently can have a major impact. It's not only about cost savings, though. He talked about in our interview, employee retention, sustainability, improving the overall work experience. So it's interesting to hear someone from the technology sector essentially confirm what many operators have been telling me and speaking to us at these events for years. The future of AI isn't theoretical anymore. The tools are already here. The question now is how quickly organizations can adopt them. And it looks like it's happening much faster than we might have predicted a few years ago. It's part of everyone's work life. I asked in my session, which happened at 10 a.m. in the morning, how many people in the room had used AI that morning, a Tuesday morning, ahead of 10 a.m. How many people had used AI that morning? A lot. There was a lot of people attending that session. A lot of people raised their hands. A lot. So I know you're at home using it. You might have used it to find this podcast, which I'd like to know more about that. Let's talk about another session. Another session that resonated with me focused on safety. The session was called Leading for Safety, the Hidden Driver of Operational Excellence. What I appreciated about this discussion was that it challenged the idea that safety is simply a compliance function. So instead, the panel argued that safety is actually a performance driver. So like when organizations invest in safety, they often improve efficiency, employee engagement, customer service, and operational consistency at the same time. GFL's Chris Jobson. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Chris. GFL's Chris Jobson describes safety as an operational multiplier. And that phrase, I think, perfectly captures what the panel was discussing. The speakers also talked extensively about technology. But what's interesting is nobody viewed technology as the solution by itself. Remember, AI doesn't work alone. But instead, we talked about technology being an amplifier. Good culture plus technology creates stronger results. Bad culture plus technology simply scales existing problems. And that was a recurring theme throughout these summits. Leadership still matters. Culture still matters. Technology simply helps organizations execute better. And we need to remember that. Let's talk about conversations. How about another one that I had during the summit? One topic that kept circulating and will continue, this new topic, not really new, but it's getting into your homes now. PFAS. I had a chance to sit down with Reworld's Paul Ligon. And one thing that stood out from our conversation was his description of PFAS as a generational challenge, something like asbestos. And that's a pretty significant statement. We all know, we all watch old TVs coming to new TVs. Even The Sopranos had a big through line about asbestos and how to get rid of it, where to put it, and what you can do with it, who's taking it, right? PFAS is becoming that big of a topic. Reworld used the summit to launch its Reassure PFAS destruction service, which was announced during the show. I forget the date of that press release. I'm so sorry, Reworld. And that focuses on certified destruction and traceability. The intriguing part is the emphasis on traceability. It's no longer enough to simply move waste from one place to another. Customers increasingly want proof. Where did the materials originate? Where did they go? Was it actually destroyed? That demand for accountability and transparency seems to be growing throughout the industry. Consumers at home want to be sure that their efforts are being heard and that effort is being, communicated on the other side, right? Something is actually happening. They're not just focusing on recycling their homes for that stuff to just end up in a landfill or something, right? That in my family, that's a big topic constantly. I'm sure it is in yours as well. A little more on PFAS. PFAS came up during the Waste 360 Investor Summits, also presented by Stifel. One key takeaway was that there's no single PFAS solution. Different waste streams require different approaches. Some situations may call for concentration and treatments. Others may require destruction. Others may involve storage or disposal. The panel that was on stage for the summit, the Investor Summit, emphasized understanding the full waste stream before selecting a solution. Now, I guess that sounds simple, but it reinforces how complex PFAS management has become. The industry is moving away from asking, what's the one answer? And we're instead shifting towards, what's the best answer for this specific solution? Which is very on brand for recycling, right? Different rules and regulations for different materials. That's a question we're going to keep asking. Let's move on to another panel that I sat in on and helped film for Ryan Fogelman. So if you catch out Ryan's video on YouTube, I filmed that. That's my contribution for this panel. But this one was all about lithium-ion batteries, the dreaded shadow that seems to be cast upon the waste and recycling industry. And again, it wouldn't be a waste conference without talking about batteries. The session focused on fire prevention and response strategies, with one of the biggest takeaways being that The problem isn't slowing down. And it sucks that the biggest takeaway is like, here's a little bit of like scary news. Speakers from the panel made it clear that we're still in the early stages of this problem. As battery-powered devices continue to proliferate, fires are appearing at every point in the waste stream. That's collection trucks, transfer stations, MRFs, waste facilities, everywhere. The panel repeatedly stressed that consumers want to do the right thing, I would hope. And the problem is that many simply don't know what the right thing is. Again, that comes back to a lot of conversations we've had on this podcast of education, resources for people to recycle. We've got to figure something out for the consumers, because when they buy, everything's got a battery in it now. When they buy these things, they got to know where to put them. Education remains one of the industry's greatest opportunities. The conversation also reinforced something that I've heard repeatedly over the past few years. There's no silver bullet. Technology helps, training helps, partnerships help, but ultimately solving this challenge requires a coordinated effort across the entire industry. It takes a village, people. All of us. All of us. I think back to the Waste Leadership Summits, fresh on the heels, whatever that saying is. When I think back, one word kind of resonates across the industry and that's still being heavily thrown around is transformation. The waste industry is changing rapidly. We all know it. Artificial intelligence is becoming operational reality. Safety programs are evolving into business performance strategies. PFAS solutions are moving from theory into implementation. Operators are facing new challenges from batteries, regulations, and customer experiences. And at the same time, there's one thing that hasn't changed. It's the people. The people. I'm not going to do a Bane impression from The Dark Knight Rises, but you understand, the people. All of that other stuff is transforming so quickly, and we need to keep up. And I always appreciate this industry is willing to collaborate, share ideas, and work together to solve a problem. That spirit was on full display at the Waste Leadership Summit. And if the conversations I heard had any indication, the next few years are going to be incredibly important for the future of waste and recycling. I feel like every day is important in the industry of waste and recycling. But things are happening so quickly. So much change. So much to do around the industry. Just so much happening. Okay. Well, I've talked at length. This has been about 20 minutes of me just straight on talking. I had no drink for this. I don't know if you can hear my voice. It is getting quite dry. So I'm going to end here and go grab a drink and probably chug a gallon of water to make up for this 20 minutes of straight talking. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for letting me slap your ears around a little bit. This was a special Waste Leadership Summit recap of the Waste World podcast. We'll be back next week with some new episodes of the podcast. One episode next week, and then continuing throughout the summer. No more shows for July and August that I have on my radar. So nothing on the horizon for me to travel to. But once September starts, we're back in it, baby. So you'll probably see me back around then. So until then, I've got a lot of home time. So if you'd like to be on the podcast, you have something to talk about, know a guest who would be good on the podcast, hit me up. Message me, email me, find me. I'm on the website. You can find my email, my LinkedIn there. So let me know. I hope you enjoyed this look back at some big conversations and themes from the event. As always, go to waste360.com for continuing coverage of the waste, recycling, and organic sustainability, environmental services industries. We cover it all. And if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, share it with a friend, let someone know about it, and put Waste Expo 2027 on your radar. We'll be back next year for a very fun time, and I hope to see you there. So, thanks for listening, and remember, it's our world. Let's not waste it.